My name's Sophie Duncan. I co-direct the National Coordinating Centre for Public Engagement, and this is the first of the NCCPE Seminar programme, a programme that is a real passion project of mine because I think that we are missing opportunities to really learn about one another's practice, and whether that be about the engagement work that we do, but also the ways that we cultivate in our institutions and our organisations the conditions where really effective engagement can happen. And we all know that that can be quite a challenge, that actually you can have brilliant ideas and really effective partnerships doing really excellent public engagement work, but sometimes the mechanisms and the support structures around you make that much harder than it needs to be. So how do we help do that? The seminar program is a program of seminars that happen every other month currently. Alternately, they go focus on work in the UK and then work on an international level, whether that be across different country contexts or focusing on a specific country context. And we're doing that in partnership with partners that we've made over the years who are really committed to engagement practice in different contexts. And our next webinar will be around publishing, about what does it mean to publish about engagement. And we're doing that with colleagues from the Gateway Journal in Australia, other colleagues in America, and of course, colleagues at UCL Press around Research for All. Today's session has three great treats. The first is looking at case studies of engaged practice, and we're going to hear from four people who have been behind those case studies. Then we're going to meet some colleagues from two universities who have been through the Watermark process, the Engage Watermark process, and I'll be telling you a little bit more about that later. And they're going to say a little bit about the engagement practice they're inspired by, but also how it is they've created the conditions within their university where this kind of work is supported and brings value back to the university and to those that they engage with. And right at the end, we're going to be making the awards. We're going to be celebrating some of the work that's been happening in those universities in receiving their Watermark awards. And these are very significant awards. They're based on a significant year-long process of review, examination, and planning. So it's a big piece of work that people have been through. And we hope that you'll stay to celebrate and the work that's happened behind the scenes to enable those institutions to be Watermark winners. And so let's get to the first section. So in my first section, I'd like to welcome to the stage four case studies leaders, Ria, Ariel, Aidan and Joanne. Welcome to the stage. And in a moment, I'm going to invite them each to introduce themselves and also to give a little snapshot about a case study of practice that they have been championing. I need to tell you that a couple of these engagement projects are covering topics that are quite sensitive, and some of you may find them quite challenging topics. They're not going to be going in detail into those topics, but you may want to step away, and we will be providing links to support organisations. And both Joanne and Ria, who are talking about those case studies, will give you a little bit of a prompt before they talk about what they're going to cover, so you can make a decision about whether you stay in for that particular part of the discussion. If you drop out of the webinar, we will definitely welcome you back in. So if you need to step away, don't worry, we will let you back in when you come back, and you'll be very welcome. So I'm going to hand over first to Ria, if that's all right, and you're expecting that, to give a bit of a heads up. And we've given them each a minute, so they haven't got long. So it will really be a tiny taste. So Ria, over to you.
Hi, thanks so much, Sophie, and it's really wonderful to be here today. So I'm Dr. Ria Sukhdev Singh. I'm a research associate and lived experience advisory board coordinator at the ESRC Center for Society and Mental Health at King's College London. But I'm here today to talk about my previous role as the public engagement lead for the SHAME project at Birkbeck, University of London, where we worked with the gender equity charity, the WOW Foundation, to co-produce the Shameless Festivals of Activism Against Sexual Violence. And as Sophie said, I'm not going to be talking about sexual violence today, but rather the process of co-producing the festival. Nevertheless, if you feel you need to take a break, please absolutely do so. You're very welcome to come back when you feel able, or not at all. That's completely fine as well. And if you feel you need confidential emotional support, please do call the 24/7 National Rape Crisis Helpline on 0808 500 222, which should have been dropped in the chat for you. Thanks.
Thanks, Ria. That's really, really lovely introduction. So let me come over to Ariel then, to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Ariel Bennett. I'm a senior researcher in open source practices at the Alan Turing Institute, and I'm one of over 300 contributors 500 contributors who work on the Turing Way project. The Turing Way is an ongoing open science, open collaboration, and community-driven project. We collate resources across data science and research practices with the intention of making open, ethical, reproducible collaboration across research accessible for everybody. We have contributors across the globe, an active translation project, several different active working groups as well. And I'm really excited to talk more about this project later on in the session. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. And now I'm going over to you, Aidan.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Aidan Tracy, Social Impact Manager at the University of Edinburgh. So my role supports the development and delivery of the university's community engagement and social impact strategy, which aims to bring positive change to Edinburgh City Region communities. So one of the key aspects of my role is to project manage our community grant scheme, which is detailed in the fair funding case study that you'll hopefully all have read on the NCCPE website. In a nutshell, the community grant scheme provides funding to local charities and organisations across the Edinburgh City region, and we've had that running since 2017. So to date, we've supported over 200 organisations, and that's with providing funding of over £700,000. And we've worked really hard to kind of evaluate the grant scheme and look at ways that we can improve the scheme's delivery, bringing it in line with principles of fair funding for the third sector of Scotland. So looking forward to being here today, and thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Aidan. And Joanne, over to you.
Thanks, Sophie. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation to join the panel. My name's Joanne Thomas, and I'm going to be talking about the OCD and the Brain project, which was a research engagement project that I was public engagement manager of while at UCL's Wellcome Centre for Human Neuroimaging. It was a multidisciplinary project funded by a Wellcome Research Enrichment Grant, and it brought together people with lived experience of obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, researchers, charities, and creative partners. And we set out to aim to better understand how young people living with OCD and parents understand the brain's role in OCD, to better align research with the needs of the OCD community, and to together co-produce some engaging resources about OCD and the brain. So there's more information about the kind of the different stages of the project in the case study, and you can also see the co-produced resources on the OCD and the Brain website, which I think will be shared in the chat. And just to note as well, obviously I will be talking about obsessive compulsive disorder. I won't be going into detail, but that is the topic of the case study. So again, there are lots of support resources available, both on the OCD and the Brain website and via the two charity partners that we worked with, which are now in the chat. So if anyone does need any support or helplines, please do use those resources. And again, as Ria was saying, if anyone needs to leave and come back, you're very welcome to do so. So thanks very much, Sophie, and looking forward to discussing more.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, I want to say to those who've joined us, you've found chat, you've introduced yourself, and now is the opportunity to start sharing questions that you have. I've got a couple of chair's privilege questions, and then we'll be coming to you for your questions. Okay, so let me come first perhaps to Ariel and then to you, Aidan, thinking a little bit about how you get support for this kind of work. So clearly you had to bring together a group of people to get that support, but you had to champion its value to enable people to come on the journey with you. So can you tell me a little bit about how you went about that? And I'll come to you first, Ariel.
Yeah, thank you. And I think I'm in a unique position in that I was one of the people who was convinced. So the Turing Way project was actually conceived and founded by Kirsty Whittaker, who's now the executive director of Berkeley Institute for Data Science, all the way back in 2019. But I can tell you that one of the reasons we feel we've been quite so successful in building a very strong community is the intentionality that we've put into it. And then the other side of that is tackling something that's widely recognized as a shared problem in research, this need for access to resources and support and guides around working reproducibly, working in the open, the ethical considerations around doing better research, the ethical considerations around doing better collaboration and communication and engaging with the public as well. And so we thought a lot very deliberately about intentionally building the community, giving people different ways to interact with the project, meeting people where they are when it comes to their skills, their interests, really building out those different pathways for people with different skill sets and backgrounds to contribute. And I myself was one person who turned up. We host the project on GitHub, which is sort of a technical place where people tend to host code. I turned up having never worked with GitHub to my first event. And by the end of it was writing chapters and was able to do what's called a pull request on GitHub and merge something into the book. So we work very hard to meet people where they're at with their skills, and then bring them along to the level that they need to be able to contribute successfully. And then the other side of it is acknowledging people as well and recognizing the amazing work that all of our volunteer contributors put into the project and the community on a daily basis from all of them as well. So I could talk about this for a very long time, but I will leave it there for now, and we can always come back to it later.
Yeah, I suppose I'm going to give you the privilege of going back to it now, and I'm just really interested in, were people hard to convince? You know, like, did they have to come to an event in order to be convinced, or was there some kind of persuasion before that to get people to really get excited about it?
Yeah, so I think, again, it was a recognized problem in sort of the data science field that these resources needed to be made available, but it was a very large project. So there was sort of a recognition that there was a shared problem that needed to be tackled if only somebody could tackle it. And then our very early events, we focused around things called book dashes, which are like hackathons, but less technical. We didn't want to scare off people who are non-technical by, kind of making them refer to tech. But we started off with these book dashes, which were short, very focused time points where people were really brought together to do this collaborative work. I will say here, obviously, things like free food helps. We launched our very first book dash at a highly collaborative event called the Collaborations Workshop that's run by the Software Sustainability Institute. So there was a bit of priming there. People come, they're ready. It's called Collaborations Workshop. They're ready to collaborate. They're ready to put some work in. And I think that helps to start the momentum of the project, but then sustaining it and keeping things going has been a mix of outreach, empowering our community members to go and talk about the work that they've done and share the work that they've done, acknowledging them, celebrating the work that they do, and yeah, just really trying to build that community up.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ariel. And Aidan, over to you. So how did you convince people to support the project that you've been working on?
Yeah, it's really it's not an easy question to answer, and Ariel, I can imagine it's similar for you. The reality is it's kind of gone on quite a bit of a journey. We launched our first community engagement strategy as a university in 2017, and the university community grant scheme was kind of a fundamental tenet of that community engagement strategy. As a university, we kind of had to convince people that actually, if we want to be serious about a community engagement strategy, then we have to show that we really want to support our communities. And we're a big institution in the city, and we have a big footprint. And actually, whilst we've got lots of fantastic staff and students that are doing lots of engagement work through their various roles and their research and the things that they do, that actually fundamentally the university also needed to show as an institution that it also had a key role to play within that, and not just rely on its staff and students to go and do that public engagement work, that actually we need to do that too. And that was a big part of the case for actually having a university grant scheme. And also, in addition to that, is, obviously naturally as a university, we spend a lot of money with our suppliers. And we obviously ask as part of that they also deliver community benefits as part of the work that they do for us. So fundamentally, we also have to show that we're willing to do that kind of work too, and that, you know, our community grant scheme really does that. You know, we're actually obviously giving money to charities and local organisations to do some really impactful work, and that encourages our suppliers to then go and do the same, and, you know, donate funds to community groups as well. And that, if I'm honest, like, so that doesn't necessarily answer the question entirely, but throughout the whole journey, we've never had to quite, it's not necessarily that we've needed to convince people, it's just to show people that actually, as an institution, this is a position that we're taking. And I think a lot of staff and students have a lot of pride in the grant scheme, because actually it is, you're able to see kind of tangible benefits and outcomes really quickly with the way the grant scheme works. Just we award £5,000 for the spring and autumn grant rounds, where, you know, fundamentally a charity can go and do something with that money quite quickly. Equally, we've got our micro grant scheme where they're only asking for £500, but again, you know, quite quickly there's an instant impact with that money that you're providing. So being able to kind of share the impact of that, it really speaks for itself. So it's kind of growing and continue to grow, and we've worked really hard to kind of improve the processes to make sure that, so that, you know, when people ask us the question, well, this is why we do this, it's an easy answer. It's almost quite an easy answer sometimes. But hopefully that gives a summary, but I won't go on too far, because I could speak all day about it too.
Well, I'm sure we'll pick up with this again in a moment, Aidan, but I want to come to Joanne and Ria and perhaps ask you a little bit about, you know, clearly both of your projects worked with people with lived experience, for you, Ria, of sexual violence, and Joanne, for people living with OCD. So how did you approach this topic with the people with that lived experience in order to make them feel that they were able to participate and be valued for that contribution? And I'll come first to you, Ria, if I may.
Thanks, Sophie. That's a great question. As you say, yeah, the festival was around sexual violence. We worked with a lot of people with lived experience, but of course, this wasn't just limited to contributors. So people who spoke at the festival, ran workshops. It was also potentially our teams, the audience members coming, and even wider teams, because we know sexual violence is such a pervasive problem. So creating a space and a process where people felt comfortable, safe, supported, and valued was really important. And we did this in a number of ways across both the programming of the festival and the production of it. And I'll just focus on three today. One area was around focusing on collaboration over curation, also pay and development opportunities, and then safeguarding. So with the programming, we really made an effort, and in particular, Sabina Akhtar from WOW, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, spent a lot of time with contributors to ensure that it wasn't just that they chose the topic that they were going to speak to, but that they also had a lot of input over the format, the approach, the tone, the messaging, to really make sure that they had ownership over the session and that it reflected what they wanted to share and the impact that they wanted to make. We also paid everyone who contributed to the festival, so speakers, workshop facilitators, and the sort of wider team of freelancers that helped us to deliver the festival. But we also went beyond that. We were really lucky through WOW to be able to offer speakers sort of further public speaking development opportunities. So to go beyond just speaking about lived experience, to be able to sort of hone the skills around using their lived experience for activism, for advocacy, for a career in public speaking, so that we were adding this kind of value add. And then safeguarding was huge. And although both of our teams had a wealth of experience in this, we also had bespoke safeguarding training from a national organization called the Survivors Trust. And one of the big things that stood out with that training was this phrase, survivors aren't a monolith. And in some ways, that's a really obvious and trite point. But it was also really helpful to remember that survivors of sexual violence sort of share that universality in a way, but also everyone's experiences are different. How they react to things are different. The support they need is different. And so for us, what that meant was we focused on that to create a suite of support at the festival, from sort of light touch interventions like we did today, inviting people to step away if they needed to. We had dedicated quiet spaces, all the way to having therapists on site, so that people could have dedicated one-on-one support if they needed it on the day. We also had things like the Survivors Trust had a stall set up in the marketplace so people could seek out more information about support available that they could avail themselves of on the day or in the future. And there was also, within the programming itself, creative writing sessions and a healing circle. And then for issues around sort of disclosures and potential threat, we had a dedicated safeguarding lead to deal with any disclosures, and we had a whole process in place for that. And we also negotiated with the venue to have female security guards. So what we hoped that would all do is create a space that we could hold these conversations, and everyone felt sort of safe, supported, and could see that there was a diversity of options available to them that hopefully reflected our understanding that survivors' experiences are so diverse.
Thank you. That was really helpful. And Joanna, perhaps different considerations for you or similar, I'd be interested to know.
Yeah, thanks, Sophie. I think there's definitely some overlap in kind of how you approach some of these things as well. And I think for us as a project team, we wanted to be very mindful throughout the project of being able to support and empower people with lived experience of OCD to participate. So we did that in a number of ways, and I'll just kind of talk through a few of those. So I think firstly, a really important aspect of the project was actually the project itself, and the original grant were co-developed with people with lived experience and an OCD charity. And I think that really helped to make sure that the topic of the project was going to be relevant and aligned with community needs. And I think that's a really important starting point when you're then going to bring in people into that conversation and into that project. And then I think when we were planning and designing the project, we worked very closely with two brilliant charities who are OCD Action, who are UK based, and the International OCD Foundation, who are US/internationally based. And I think their links are in the chat. And they were an incredible source of support and advice and kind of sounding board throughout the project of how we could be really mindful and inclusive, and support those with lived experience to participate in the project and design it in a way that would enable that. So I think that was a really important aspect. Then moving into recruitment, we wanted to be very clear in all of the kind of communications when we were recruiting for the project, about the aims of the project and what we wanted from participation. So, for example, in the workshop phase of the project, where we had young people living with OCD and parents of young people with lived experience, one of the things we wanted to explore was people's lived experience itself. So obviously being clear about that as a kind of, so people, when they were signing up, knew that that was part of the project, and they could of course ask questions about that, in advance. But being clear about what we wanted to explore meant that people could sign up if they felt able to do that. And of course, no one had to share anything they weren't comfortable with. But I think it just meant that we were able to establish that quite clearly from the outset. I think also being really mindful of language was important. There's a lot of misinformation and kind of misuse of terms around OCD. So I think just being aware of some of the pitfalls with that, and being really mindful of using inclusive language around OCD was important, and also having a kind of clear point of contact through recruitment. So I was kind of a named person that people could reach out to if they wanted to ask more about taking part, or throughout the whole project if they had questions or queries. I think was very helpful to have that kind of continuous person named. And then in terms of delivery, we wanted to create kind of safe spaces where people felt able to contribute, but also to do things. For example, think about the power dynamics within those sessions. So, for example, in the workshops, we worked really closely with a creative facilitator called Rachel Bauer, who was fantastic. And we very much wanted to flatten the hierarchy between researchers and people with lived experience. So we were careful about how to design the activities so that the researchers and the people with lived experience were all taking part as equal participants. And I think, again, that sets a really important tone, that everyone is bringing different expertise to this project, but it's all equally valued and important. And then there are a number of different ways that people could contribute into sessions. So feedback, so they could talk live, they could use the chat, they could email things afterwards, add to Padlets, they could post things to us. So people had a variety of ways that they could feed in a way that suited them best. And then we had a number of kind of more safeguarding type processes in place. So we had safeguarding protocols so that if someone needed support, we knew who would be doing what and what the process would be. We also had ground rules established from the start of sessions, so people were clear that they could leave at any time, that they didn't need to share anything that they weren't comfortable with, things like that, so that people knew that it was a safe space for them to contribute. We had breakout spaces available, which were staffed by a member of the charity partner as well. So if people needed that one-on-one support or a bit more of a personal chat, that was available. And sort of helpline and support resources were shared before, during, and after sessions as well. And then just finally, in terms of, I guess, the value point, I think this is really important. And again, like Ria was saying, we also reimburse people for their time and contributions. We also were very conscious that we wanted to recognise their expertise and contributions. So when we'd kind of completed the resources and were launching the project, we designed and delivered some of those launch events alongside the lived experience partners. We also asked people how they wanted to be recognised for their contributions. So some of the people with lived experience are named on the website, for example, if they wanted to be. That wasn't an obligation, it was up to them. And then finally, we have something called the OCD and the Brain Consortium, which is we asked people if they wanted to sign up and be named as part of, so that, for example, when the researchers or different team members are kind of continuing to share the project, for example, at a conference or applying for an award or something like that, that it's not just that person who's applying who's recognised, it's actually the whole group who contributed to the project. So I guess I'm also kind of talking on behalf of the whole consortium as well today with the project. So yeah, it was definitely an important aspect, and we tried to embed that throughout the whole process.
Thank you, Jen. I'm hoping, as a panel, you're happy for me to move into the audience's questions, because they're kind of relevant to what you've been saying, rather than stick with what I was going to ask you. So I hope that's okay. And there's a question about participation in the project. So who currently isn't participating in each of your projects? Do you know? And do you know why? So what are the barriers to participation? And how are you tackling that? And how are you working to make your projects inclusive and diverse? So I don't know who'd like to take that first. I mean, it's a interesting and probably quite a challenging question, but anybody want me to come to you first? Thank you, Ariel. That's great.
Yeah, so this is obviously a really tricky question to answer, because we don't know the people who aren't participating. It's very difficult to identify exactly who they are specifically. But we have some ideas. Our project is a volunteer project in data science. So if you don't have the time or the institutional buy-in from your institute to dedicate some time to a volunteer project, that can be very difficult for people to find the time to contribute on it. One of the ways that we tackle that is by running things like collaboration cafes, which are regular co-working sessions, and also the book dashes are intended to give people the space and time to sort of dedicate and have a fixed period of time where they're doing their contributions to the book. We also welcome all contributions as well, even if people just have time to fix a typo. We're very happy for people to fix typos. Another big barrier that we have identified is the book is now 5 different guides. It's very large. It's very difficult to navigate, and some people get a bit overwhelmed with the sheer amount of material. So we're trying to create, using some technology to create some curated pathways for people, so that they can actually select content that is particularly meaningful to, say, early career researcher, or people working in a particular field, or people interested in a particular problem, so that they can take a more curated look at it, and it's a bit easier to start navigating around and have a look at it. And then finally, I will just pick up on the, sorry, I've got 2 more points. Pick up on the technical aspects. So a lot of people come to us having never worked with GitHub before. And as I mentioned, we run GitHub training to get people into understanding and being able to use the platform that we've decided to host on. And we've been very successful in that, actually. We run GitHub training for, I think, probably about 100 people a year, I think, total, both in terms of onboarding them to the project, but also more generally in data science. And so getting them to that base level and having experienced people also help to mentor them to get onto the project. And then finally, on when it comes to things like accessibility and accessibility practices, we actually have an accessibility working group that is comprised of volunteers that's been working on our accessibility policy, that reviews the practices and the community standards that we work on, and the templates that we use, and the platforms that we use for their accessibility. They are not afraid to point out if we're doing something that's inaccessible to, say, people who are using screen readers or people who are neurodivergent. And so we really try and incorporate that into all of our community practices as we go. This project is ongoing, so we're very much doing a bit of learning as we go along and then trying to incorporate that feedback back in. And we're always up for adjusting stuff as well. Yeah, final point, accessibility fund. When we run book dashes, people have a set amount of funding that they are able to access to help them to participate, whether that's extra internet for the week, or perhaps they realize they need better headphones. My headphones weren't working today. Or, you know, they need some childcare, and we've been lucky enough to have institutional support so that we're able to fund and support that participation and remove as many barriers as possible that we can.
Thanks, Ariel. That's really helpful. I wonder, does anyone else want to respond to that question? I was thinking, Ria, you might want to respond to that. You weren't indicating you wanted to, but
Happy to, but just wanted to say I think Aiden has his hand up. So did you want me to
sorry.
respond and then go
Forgive
to
me.
Aiden?
That's because the Q&A is over that tiny bit of my screen, Aiden. So let me come to Aiden first, and then I'll come to you. Forgive me, Aiden.
Thanks. I'll be really brief because actually I think it's quite easy for us to. It's a straightforward answer for us in the sense that we do a lot of equalities monitoring as part of our community grant scheme, so that we are able to really understand who is applying and then allow us to understand who might not be applying. And it allows us to be more targeted in our marketing and how we kind of promote the grant scheme. But also what we do is we ensure that when the grant scheme is open, that we provide the opportunity to meet with potential grantees in different ways. So we do webinars to kind of let people know this is how you can apply. But we also do in-person sessions as well, so that actually we're being as accessible as we can. But what we also do is we don't expect everyone to write a squeaky clean grant application, because actually we recognise that a lot of local community groups might actually not have somebody that knows how to write a funding bid. So the way we kind of score it and have a scoring matrix for it, we try and take that into account so that it's not the best bid writer wins every time type thing. So we try and reduce those kind of inequalities as best we can throughout. But we're always on the lookout to kind of make sure we're improving that as we go.
Brilliant. Thanks, Aiden. So am I all right to come to you now?
Yeah, sure. And I'll try to make it quick because Ariel and Aiden have both made really good points. So I guess there are two things with the festival in terms of communities. There's like communities of survivors represented in the program, so like speakers and workshop facilitators, and then communities of survivors who attended the festival. And it is a tricky question. How do you know who you're not engaging? I don't think in our feedback we explicitly asked, did equalities monitoring. One of the things we did around audience was the venue that we held the festival at, the Battersea Arts Center, was really embedded within the community, has a presence there, has its own history of engaging with the community. So like with a lot of public engagement, you know, really lean into your partners. They do a lot of that work. They have the presence, they have the credibility, they have the pull. I would say it's still a little bit skewed, sort of white middle class, unsurprisingly. The program, however, where we engaged community, survivors from the, if we say like the survivor community, was extremely diverse across all kinds of marks. And I think there are practical things that we did that Sabina from WOW especially did. And we can look at, you know, even the way things like paying, being able to cover childcare removes those barriers to participation. But I also, a strong part of me sincerely believes it's about commitment. And I think if you really commit to wanting to platform, not only engage, but platform diverse voices to showcase diverse experiences, and you don't let yourself fall back on, oh, well, we tried, but people aren't finding us. I think you can do it. I think both teams had a history of partnering with people, particularly with something like sexual violence, where we still kind of struggle with the image of the stereotypical victim is middle class white woman. We sort of know this. We talk about this all the time. So I think it was just being intentional about that and making sure that we had room to showcase all the different experiences that people have, the different backgrounds that people come from. And I think people respond to that intention. They look at your track record. WOW has a strong track record of engaging with diverse communities. Leading up to the festival, Shame had maybe not done as many public engagement activities, but we had done, for instance, like a writer in residence program with survivor and activist Winnie M. Lee. So this is a very long, rambly answer, but I do think, there are the practical ways you address barriers, but I do think the core of it is having a strong commitment and not letting yourself off the hook from doing that work, putting those theories and beliefs into action.
Great, thank you. Yeah. Unless you're urgently wanting to speak, Jan, I'm going to move on to the next questions, if that's okay. And this is quite a tough question, I think. I'm kind of glad I'm not on the panel and I can chair this question, but what do you think the future of this kind of work will be, given the current financial state of the higher education sector? And do you think that will change the work you're able to do? I think, shall I come to you first, Joanne? Would you mind going first for that? It's a tough question, so give yourself a chance to collect your thoughts.
That is a tough question. I'm not sure I'm going to do it justice, but I will try. I think so with the OCD and the Brain Project, we had a specific budget that was for that project. It was a fairly healthy budget, which meant that we had resources to, for example, cover some staff time, cover creative partners, and reimburse all of the contributors and have resources to make the project kind of what it was. So I think that seems to be less common and less available, and so I think what specific kind of dedicated budgets can do is really create impactful projects that can have these more developed outcomes and impacts that have kind of ongoing legacy as well. And I think that was something I was really pleased about in this project, is this kind of ongoing relationships that are continuing now that have been built. It's really transformed how the researchers think about research, and they now involve lived experience experts in all of their work going forward, things like that. And I think if you don't kind of have dedicated funding for that, I think the level of impact perhaps can be less. So I think it's a really tricky situation. I think unfortunately it's one of those things that resources can make projects more impactful. I think there are things you can do with smaller budgets, but it's a really difficult context that we're all working within, I think.
Great, thanks, Joanne. Anybody else want to comment on that? Thank you. Oh gosh, you all do. Okay, brilliant. I'll come to Ariel first.
Great. Yeah. I do want to acknowledge that we have been lucky in the Turing Way to enjoy support from the Alan Turing Institute for the last 5 or 6 years or so, and that's enabled us to employ a full-time community manager, research community manager. First, we had the incredible Mavika Sharan, and now we have Annalie Steele, who are doing a lot of the regular showing up for things like the collaboration cafes, the helping to organize the book dash, making sure newsletters get sent out on time, and that we have a template deck for people who want to go and talk about the project, and showing up to a lot of the workshops and the onboarding and things like that. And this year, what we're really trying to do is transition some of that into community-based working. So we're setting up a working group to do that community management work, to invite more people in to share that burden, to spread the load out across different people so that, you know, one person is not doing the work of a full-time person, but maybe it's feasible for them to keep an eye on our socials, for example, or commit to showing up to the collaboration cafes and hosting them all the time. So we're really doing that work. And we're also this year doing a lot of work with the community around governance and formally transitioning to having a steering committee as well. We would do very much still want to have funding. I think having the material resources available and the person resources available to put time and energy into the community keeps the momentum going when there are natural ebbs and flows in things. So, you know, we get a lot of people very involved in the book dash, but outside of that, you know, stuff still needs to be maintained and stuff keeps chugging over. And so keeping people engaged and keeping the momentum going in the downtime, I think, is really important. I just want to acknowledge what Joanne said about it's really like the driver of a lot of the impact, but also want to acknowledge that it's really hard to measure the impact of having a person, because really you need to compare to the universe in which that person wasn't in that role and that funding didn't exist. And I would love to be able to compare the two universes, but I cannot. So it's hard to really say definitively this happened because this person was in this role, and capture the full scope of like the work that they've done, the conversations they've had, the trust they've built with the community, sure, you know, the ideas that they've sparked, the people they've empowered. So yeah, I think it will be it's going to be difficult going forward with the uncertainty, but I also think that there is a lot of evidence and impact out there that really we just need to be making sure that we're making the case and like really drilling down into like, this is how these people are making a difference. This is how the accessibility funding, the paying contributors has made a difference just wherever we can, basically.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go to Rhea next and then to Aidan, but I've got some other questions that I'm hoping to fit in as well. So if you can be as tight as you can, and then I'll come to you first for the next questions.
Okay, I'm going to try to be really quick and say, yes, it's an extremely difficult landscape. It also is a time where it's so important that we're doing this work. But just because it's important doesn't mean that we can like squeeze blood from a turnip. I do think one of the answers might be being a little bit cynical about how we join things up behind the scenes. So with our festival, for instance, it got a lot of press coverage leading up to the festival. And it seemed to me like such an easy case to make. It was at, you know, this really cool arts center. We had a launch event with the former Prime Minister of Australia and the Duchess of Cornwall, now the Queen. And it was this really groundbreaking festival. And I think if we can make the case to universities that they should be capitalizing on this and not separating out research and impact as a separate thing from admissions, from development and alumni, from philanthropy, we can create hopefully like a virtuous circle. So I think if we connect it to things like the development and alumni offices who are going out and seeking, individual contributions, like philanthropic contributions, and tie that to this research impact and show the societal impact, it's bringing in students, it's going to bring in more alumni. I think if we can do some of that joined up thinking and link into strategy and go where the money is, that might help.
Great, thanks, Rhea. Anything to add, Aidan, to
be honest, no, I think resonate with what everyone else said. It's like really making the case is the position we're all kind of in. We are currently putting together our next community plan, and one of the key commitments within that is our community grant scheme. And the reality is the position we're taking is actually that our communities aren't going anywhere. So we've got to show that we still care even with the current financial kind of situation. And I think that that's understood at university executive level, so that will hopefully stay the same. But it's no doubt it is a challenging situation for everybody.
Thanks, Aidan. So we're coming very close to the end of this section of the seminar. So I'm going to ask you each a specific question, and then you've got a minute to answer it. So Aidan and Ariel, I'm going to ask you the question about impact. So specifically for you, Adam, how the projects you fund report and show impact, and how you evidence that, and Ariel, for you, what kinds of impacts that you're showing through your program and how you evidence it. Bear in mind you've got a minute. And then Joe, Anne, and Ria, paying community organisations. All of us find it difficult. Are there any workarounds, top tips? How do you make that work? I hope that's all right. And I'm going to come to you first, Aidan.
Yeah, okay, in a minute, that's hard, but essentially what we do, to get our grantees to report on impacts, we keep our reporting really simple. We have two really straightforward questions about how the money had an impact and what a difference did it make, so that they're able just to kind of illustrate in their own way the impact, because actually at the end of the day, we're only giving them what is actually quite a small amount of money. So we really shouldn't be expecting some big glossy report every time that we fund somebody. And I think that allows us to then really just get a really clear story that we can then share externally. Where there is a challenge on that is internally, sometimes we get asked about the long-term impacts of the programme. And actually, the reality is we try to do that. But because we're only giving out a certain amount of money, it's unfair for us to ask of the long-term impacts of that, because actually the long-term impact is because of that community group and charity, not because of our £5,000. So we've got to be really kind of mindful of that. So that's where we are, and we're really try and make it easy for our grantees so that they can actually focus on the delivery rather than telling us what they're up to. So yeah, hopefully that was a minute.
Well, no, I love that ethical consideration about what you're claiming impact for when it's so many other people's work. Brilliant. And Ariel, the impact question for you.
Yeah, so we have very, I'd say, relatively easy quantifiable metrics around how many times the guides are viewed and which countries people are viewing it from. We don't collect much more detailed statistics than that, but we do report on those. We obviously, we measure some of our success by the number of chapters in the book, the number of contributors that we have contributing to the project. We think the more contributors, the better. Number of talks that we give, et cetera, et cetera. But the things I really wanted to highlight here, and I'm going to put two links in the chat. One is to our contributors guide, which is where we ask people to share personal highlights of their time contributing to the project and what they think they've learned. And then the other is a recent GitHub issue, and you shouldn't need to be logged into GitHub to access this, where we went to the community and asked them to share their experiences, their personal stories, and how it's been impactful for them. So we went back to a really incredibly wide network, former contributors, projects that we know have been inspired by the Turing Way, people that we have previously collaborated with, and we've asked them to share. We put it out on social media as well and asked people to share their personal stories of how it's impacted, how they use the Turing Way in their work, how contributing or participating in the project has helped them, given them new skills, and provided them with confidence as well. So you can go through and you can read all of these amazing stories, and we're really delighted to be referencing these in future grant applications as well. We think this is probably one of the most heartwarming threads I've got in my arsenal for a grey day, I think.
Thanks, Ariel. And then I'm coming to you, Ria, about paying community organisations in a minute. How on earth are you going to do that?
It's a simple answer in that it is impossible. Like, it feels very difficult. So I don't know that I have a top tip at the moment. I think we just keep hitting our heads against the wall and trying to push things through. But I will say that there are like glimmers of hope. Things like Aidan's project that he's talked about today. I know UKRI has their, forget what it's called, but it's like a community research fund where the money goes directly to community organizations. And I know some funders, when you do co-produced projects, that's also built into it, that as soon as you get the funding, you can send out the block funding to the partner. Not everyone does that. As far as I know, Welcome doesn't do that yet. There's something called the Co-Pro Futures Inquiry. as a partnership, I think, across Sheffield, Manchester, and a bunch of funders looking at how to remove the barriers to doing this kind of work. So at the moment, I think it's impossible, but I do think that funders and senior leadership in universities at least are aware of this now and are working towards it. But I think we each in our own institutions have to keep pushing senior leaders to make change, to make this easier.
Cool. Thanks, Ria. And Joanne, the final minute goes to you. Any reflections on paying community partners?
Yeah, I think just echo what Ria was saying. I think it's a really difficult thing, and I think there's that what I've tried to do, I guess, is control the things that I can control. So, for example, give our finance teams as much notice as I can to start the process, because I think the timeframes are often one of the most frustrating things. So, as soon as I know about a new project, kind of talk to the finance teams and say what we will need to do and how we can do that, what the options are. And for example, for the OCD and the Brain project, we had UK and US based participants, so thinking about how to navigate that. And then I think things kind of managing expectations with community groups or partners as well. So just kind of setting out the context of which you're working within, and kind of give them as much transparency about the timelines and kind of what you're working towards as well, I think can just be helpful, so that people at least have an idea of some of the complexities that you're working within, and what they can expect in terms of timelines, and keep them updated on things as well. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you for very succinct and very helpful answers. It's just left to me to thank you. Thank you for coming and sharing your practice. Thank you for doing the case studies. I did want to give a shout out for Faraha Asani, who was actually wrote the case studies on your behalf, and also was preparing for this to lead this seminar today, and then unfortunately was unable to come at the last minute. And also sadly Sabina, who Ria's colleague, who also was unable to come, and just the amazing work that they've done to bring these case studies into the NCCPE website. So we've talked about great engagement practice, and now we're going to think a little bit about the cultures or the ways that organisations organise themselves to support that practice. And we've invited representatives from 2 institutions that we've got to know very, very well. And we've got to know them because we've been doing the Engage Watermark process with them. And later we'll be making awards to them for the work that they've been doing. But in order to take us there, we thought we'd spend a little bit of time together thinking a little bit about how they've got there, how they've got the support in place, and what that's led to in terms of their practice. And so again, I'm going to, as I hand to you with questions, would you mind introducing yourself as part of the answer? And then that means we can save time for hearing from you. So I'm going to kick off with Sally, and I'm going to come to you first. And you co-direct the Look Again Festival, which is a year-long programme of arts-based events, workshops and exhibitions, both inside the university and in Aberdeen in the community. And it's been going for 10 years, which is really amazing and really embedded into the work of the Grays Arts School. And so I'm wondering if you would give us a bit of a flavour of what it is and what you've been learning.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sophie. And honestly, thank you for those presentations. They were so insightful and so much synergies within the work that we do at RGU. So yeah, thank you for that to all the speakers. So I'm Sally. I'm the director of Look Again at Grays School of Art, and I have the privilege to be one of the leaders for public engagement. But to give a bit of context, back in 2014, a group of creative workers and cultural organisations were brought together by RGU. It was at a time there was a lot of negative narrative going in and around the city, and at that time, Look Again Visual Art Festival was born. And as the title suggests, we wanted to use the city's history and cultural heritage as inspiration for new commissioned public artworks that redressed our civic spaces that were kind of like slightly forgotten with in the city. And we wanted to tell our story through a suite of new public artworks, but definitely from a contemporary lens. And as the title suggests, it was basically to just look again and to kind of like change the narrative. So our first step was to redress our civic statues, including the likes of William Wallace, Robert the Bruce, and Robbie Burns, obviously a suite of Scottish heroes. And as we learned in our first festival, some people loved it and some people didn't, and they were certainly not afraid to let us know. Since then, though, through our portfolio of work, we've been involved in bringing together artist-led collectives in the city to work with young people across a range of projects, including creating a mural right in the heart of the city centre to instill pride and a sense of ownership in a place dogged by antisocial behaviour. As Sophie said, we've been doing this for 10 years and we've got so many stories to tell. And this is just a nugget of what we've done. And as a graduate of RGU, it is incredibly exciting to be one of those leaders to lead on public engagement. Public engagement is at our core. It's who we are and it's in our DNA. And as we all know, creativity is powerful, and public engagement, when you get it right, really can make a difference.
Brilliant, thanks, Sally. And we're going to be doing a case study about the festival, so people will be able to get really loads of detail about how you've made it happen, and you'll be able to share some of those really exciting stories that we've had the privilege of hearing. And so let me go over to Valerie. And the Suffolk Special Olympics is maybe a different kind of project in which you're working with a very specific community of people to develop a better understanding of how to address health inequalities. And I wonder if you'd like to talk a little bit and give us a bit of a highlight from that practice.
Yes, so ours is more of a kind of a research lens project, and I really must give a shout out to Ellie Rossiter, who is the main person who's my researcher who worked on this project, who has huge skills and patience to be able to deliver on this particular project. So what it was working alongside people with a learning disability. So it's a group of people that are probably not heard from very often, particularly in research. So how do we actually hear from their voices? And we use participatory methods to develop a co-production framework, really to understand kind of what was going on in terms of health and well-being in those particular individuals. As we probably all know, health inequalities are particularly high in those with learning disabilities. And what this project kind of looked to see was kind of what was going on and how we could better support these individuals. What it consisted of is developing a research advisory group who were mainly people with learning disabilities or those that cared for them, to really kind of explore what was going on. The project, as you mentioned, the Suffolk Special Olympics. So the Special Olympics is for those individuals with learning disabilities. So it was kind of brought about because the chair of the Special Olympics in Suffolk approached us to say, we'd like to explore health inequalities in these athletes more. And so it was born out of that. And with the university support, we were able to deliver this program of kind of really exploring it. And basically they said, just talk to us. It's really not that hard. You know, we want to talk. We've got a story to tell you. Please do take the time to listen to us and to explore it further.
Great. Thanks, Valerie. And I'm quite interested in how you cultivated the conditions where projects like this became part of, you know, like the work of your two institutions. So maybe, Sally, you could reflect a little bit on how it's linked into the student side of the work that you do.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think it's important that, you know, we're creating these graduates, and obviously up in Scotland, there's a lot of like retention. You know, like graduate retention is really quite difficult, but the festival we now know has made an impact on that in terms of our recruitment, and also in terms of the impact of people staying. You know, because we created those conditions and we provided those kind of stages and platforms that are necessary to kind of put those kind of live learning experiences into play. And so for our graduates to put their learning and to take it and put into practice has been really, really important for us. And I think through the festival, we identified like a suite of needs, and we allowed our students to be part of that process. I think what's been key to us is about trusting our students to be part of that process, and also working within communities to develop a sense of mutual respect. And as I say, for them to actually put into practice these professional skills and to put them into real time has really made a huge impact on their kind of educational journeys within their time at RGU.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sally. And what about you, Valerie? Has the university supported your work, and how has that helped?
So I would like to come back and kind of talking about the students, because actually what was kind of came out of this project, and kind of driven by Ellie and our head of physiotherapy, was actually once these people with learning disabilities were kind of involved with the university, wanted to explore some more. And obviously some of them are athletes and they need some support sometimes, but they don't necessarily always go and see physios, and physios don't necessarily know how to talk to them. So what was born out of this project was actually the not only the people in the advisory group, but their friends as well came along to a session for physio students who could then talk to them, and those with learning disabilities could talk to the physios, and there was this cross cultivation. So it wasn't as an intended part of this project, but it came out of it, and actually it was one of the really powerful things that came out was this kind of relationship that developed from where we had people in kind of doing more of a research type thing and exploring that, and it really fed into this kind of this teaching experience, which not only gave the trainee physios kind of some experience, but it also allowed those with learning disabilities to learn what it was like from a physio point of view, and not to be scared if they had to kind of go and visit the physio. And we've got more ideas because we've got a dental community interest company as well. So again, trying to link it with that, because we know oral health, particularly in learning disabilities, is a huge problem. So again, there's more places we can go with this, which just started because of a small research project. So it's not as big as Sally's yet, but we can we'll keep going with it. So it is really, really interesting. And I think obviously we've got some of the people with learning disabilities also had physical disabilities, so we had to make sure that the university was accessible, and trying to make sure that we had the right rooms in place and the right facilities in place to support these individuals as well.
Great, thanks, Valerie. And it's exciting to hear how, from a relatively small project, a whole load of things have now been enabled for the universities. So I'm going to pick it up with Andrea and Nick, bring you into the conversation and think a little bit about how do you support then these kinds of engagement projects? How do you make an environment where these kinds of things can happen? And let me come first to you, Nick.
Thanks very much, Sophie. I think one of the ways we do that, and it's picking up on a point that Sally mentioned, is the way we talk about public and community engagement at RGU. Sally used the phrase about it being in our DNA, and that was a phrase that was used when I joined the university about 4 years ago. And it's absolutely true. It runs through everything that we do. It's a really important part of the identity of the university. So I think the language that we use is hugely important from that point of view, and the way in which every school, every professional department, either is actively involved in public engagement, or is have got plans to get involved. It isn't something that is the preserve of a particular unit or group within the institution. It is something that every part of the organisation is contributing in some way to the sort of public engagement activities that we do. I think also from an institutional perspective, I mean, we're very conscious of our impact as an institution on the city and the region, and it's very easy to sometimes sort of rely on kind of particular metrics about our economic impact, or about the number of people we employ, and also obviously important number of people in the city and the region that study with us. But I think beyond that, it's really important to us that we are a trusted institution and that we're a valued institution. And a lot of the work that we do through Look Again, through some of our other big initiatives like Street Sport, which is about providing opportunities for young people to have kind of access to sporting opportunities, where there are lots of volunteers from RGU who facilitate that, and we host the Street Sport organisation. That is about building that kind of social capital with the kind of wider community, ensuring that people trust us, value us, believe that we're important over and above our kind of economic contribution. And just one final point, I remember fairly soon after I started at RGU being in a taxi going to the university, and the taxi driver, she asked me where I worked, and I said I worked at RGU, and she said, "We like RGU," and I said, "Oh, that's nice to hear. Why do you like us?" And he said, "Because you do stuff in the city. You support people across the city." And I think it's really nice when people identify us in that kind of way, because it goes beyond, I think, often the very sort of traditional measures of how universities have impact.
Great, thanks, Nick. And Andrea, how about for you? How's it different, or is it the same indeed?
So, hello everyone, I'm Andrea Toca. I'm Head of Research, Culture and Knowledge Exchange at the University of Suffolk. And my
There's
role
a bit
is...
of a crackle on your mic, Andrea.
I will put it in the chat then.
Thank you, Andrea. And maybe just as we're reflecting and waiting for Andrea to share her reflections, it would be good to talk a little bit about what does it mean? What does it mean for people when they work for an engaged institution? What does that practically look like? So you said for RGU it's in the DNA, and Valerie, you're saying actually we started this project and it was supported by the university. But what's the practicalities of being in that kind of environment? And I'll come to you first, Valerie, if that's all right.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you said, Nick, around that thing of wanting to make a difference, you know, I think, and doing stuff that actually matters to those people around us, because actually we really want as a university to be seen as doing stuff that's useful and usable, as well as training our young people up, both who are kind of from the county of Suffolk itself, but also from outside as well, and kind of getting recognised for kind of what we're doing locally, but making it kind of onto that stage nationally and also internationally. I mean, University of Suffolk is quite small compared to a lot of universities, but you know, it absolutely is kind of part of what we want to do. I'm a director of a research institute, and I really don't want to do research that's just going to sit on a shelf and not be used. The research I want to do, I want people, actually that's really useful. I can use that in whatever I'm doing. So that's what we want to do. And I think that kind of goes across the majority of research that we do here at the university, as well as kind of all the extra public engagement bits that kind of are part of that, and kind of, as I said, kind of come out of it without sometimes even realizing. And I think when we talk to our members of staff about public engagement, they can, and we say, oh, are you doing public engagement? And I think they almost scratch their heads, because they are just doing it. They don't even realize they are doing it. They just do it as part of everything that they do, because it's just there, kind of almost, as you say, in our DNA.
Great, thanks, Valerie. And Andrea, let me say for you, public engagement is a distinct feature of University of Suffolk's brand, and it is a great opportunity for us to celebrate the university's leadership and practices of public engagement. Our senior leaders are committed to public engagement and to enabling staff to engage in it. There's a strong sense in which PE is the right thing to do, and for some staff it is so embedded within their practice that it is almost instinctive. We as a university are deeply connected to its town and region, with staff who are committed to making an impact locally and contributing to the economic, cultural, social and health well-being of the region. We have made... Oh dear, sorry, I missed that. Oh, forgive me. We have made rapid progress on embedding public engagement within its emerging research portfolio, and there's commitment from all colleagues to do even better. As part of my role, I am driving the public engagement agenda forward with support from many colleagues across the university. Everyone is an ally, I would say. Public engagement is formally recognised in promotions, appraisal, workloads, as well as respected career and a well-respected academic career framework which gives parity of esteem to research, knowledge exchange, PE and teaching. We offer PE formal training to staff alongside a lot of informal peer-to-peer support and a desire from staff for more, as they are keen to develop new skills and improve existing ones. You have many strong partnerships with local organisations and agencies in the health, charity, social and justice and business sectors. There is a great opportunity for the university to play more of a convening and catalysing role, bringing together local agencies and coordinating efforts on issues of local concern, contributing its own expertise where it can. We host a wide variety of conferences, seminars and events for staff and students. For example, 1,126 people attended our public lecture series since 2021. Thank you, Andrea. And I'm sorry we couldn't hear it in your beautiful voice, but I hope I did you justice. And then I'm coming to you, Sally and Nick. Perhaps one of you would like to share one final thought about being an engaged institution as RGU. I don't know which of you would like to take that.
Well, I just wanted to say really quickly that you know, it is a privilege to do it, and I think like what Valerie was saying about, like, you know, RGU's voice is really important to the city and its people. And I think there's an incredible bank of people within the university that are so embedded within the city, and their voices are really important. I think what we're really good at is hearing. We hear and we listen. I think it takes a lot to hear sometimes, and sometimes people don't hear, and it allows us to really create projects and activity and create real, lasting impact. Like RGU sticks, like what Nick was saying, what we do sticks. And I think because of that, people really do trust us. And I think we definitely are community led. We're not about plopping something down in a community, because that just doesn't work for us. And so from our perspective, it is like a real honor and privilege to be able to stick around for 10 years. We're a kind of lasting example of that. And we're not going anywhere soon. So, from my perspective, it is a great honor to do it.
Brilliant, brilliant. And it is in part what we found when we came and assessed you as part of the Watermark process, the Watermark process being quite a revealing process, I think, and one that it does, I think it's a hard process to go through, but also a helpful process to go through. That's what people tend to tell us. And we're going to segue seamlessly into the awards, where we'll be reflecting on what you've told us and what we've learned from being with you over the last years. Many of you know the Watermark Award. Please stay and support your colleagues. This is a really important opportunity for us as a sector to celebrate those people who've been working behind the scenes to build a culture for public engagement. The public engagement professionals, the academics, the professional services people, the students, the community organisations, and the leaders who have been able to champion this. So do come and celebrate with your colleagues, as 2 institutions have completed this process. The process is a rigorous exploration of what universities do to support engagement, and also their plans for the future. So it looks at both a mirror to what's happening now through the eyes of those who they've engaged, their staff, their students, their partners, but also their plans for the future and how they're going to be resourced. And there are 4 award levels, bronze, silver, gold. And for those who are sustaining gold over a period of more than 3 years, an opportunity to apply for a platinum award. And an award at any of these levels is a very significant achievement, which evidences that people have gone through the assessment, but also planned intelligently and resourced intelligently their plans for the next few years. So 2 more institutions have just completed the award, and we've just met some colleagues from those 2 institutions, but I'm going to start with the University of Suffolk. And before handing over to Paul to say a few words about what the assessment revealed, we wanted to play a short film to celebrate the work of the university. Its main campus hub is in Ipswich, but it also has campuses located in Bury St Edmunds, Lowestoft and Great Yarmouth. And after the film, Paul will make the award.
Our Civic University Agreement is a catalyst for change. So we're looking at how we work with our partners across the region to increase the prosperity of Suffolk and also the economic development of the area and the communities that we serve.
There are a number of similarities between the club and the university. They have the same goals and the same aspirations. We want to attract and retain talent within the county, and we want people to be proud of the football club and also proud of the University of Suffolk.
Healthwatch is there to work with as many organisations as possible to bring about the best change and the quality of care for the public. And the university is a unique asset in the county, and together we can make a difference.
I hope you enjoyed that film. I think it gives a really good flavour of just some of the many partnerships that underpin the university's engagement. And the assessment revealed really excellent collaboration. I think you've heard examples of that already. Working with local organisations, agencies, numerous examples, like Valerie, of researchers working with local community organisations to address needs, generate impact. And the principles of equity and social justice, really matter to the staff there, and it seemed to be really something that is properly supported. It is a community of staff and students and partners who are committed to working together to make a difference, to support the economic growth, the social health, the well-being of the region. And I think staff like Andrea today and Valerie just sort of exemplify those qualities. So we're really excited about what happens next and how the university will build on the foundations. And we're delighted to award Suffolk a bronze watermark. And here they are accepting the award.
What I'm most proud, I think we created a culture of co-creation and knowledge exchange at the University of Suffolk, valuing lived experiences of our communities.
I'm most proud of the way that we approach this in a really collaborative way. We had everybody involved from every department at every single different level, from PhD students right through to senior academics to our professors. Valerie is an example here today.
It's very much what the university is about, is public engagement.
I've particularly valued the way in which the university has sought to go as far as it can in the community in terms of engagement. They've sought to understand the issues that are affecting local people and begin to build a picture about how the university and other institutions can help tackle that as well as us.
It means a lot for us, not only in recognising our hard work, but also signposting us to where we can go in the future and what we would improve on.
Really is how we are going to scale up and move towards the silver watermark as our next level.
Many congratulations, and a real indication of the amazing work we found when we came to talk with you and explore with you the work that you were doing, and some really inspiring examples both of practice but mainly of the huge support that you put in to enable people to develop really effective engagement. So very, very well done, and we look forward to you coming back, having done your action plan and be moving towards a silver level of the award. So now it's my pleasure also to come to Robert Gordon University in Aberdeen, who also are being awarded a watermark today. They threw themselves into the process. And again, before Paul presents the award, we've provided a short film about the university, whose campus sits on the edge of the city. And this film features a wonderful project to work with their students and local community to develop a long-term environmental project in the river valley that sits below the campus buildings. And it kind of captures the spirit, as we've already heard, of how the university works.
Throughout all that we do, we're doing lots of things about being sustainable, whether you're a fashion student or an architect. Then when we come to our own business operations, we're decarbonising, we've got great things we're doing with our heating and lighting, looking at our source of energy. But we've also got to then think about our environment. And if we don't role model the behaviours that we want people to think about personally, corporately, and in a community way, then we're not really living up to our moral purpose for the common good.
This is going to be an intergenerational project, really, to get the full, mature ecosystem to its absolute maximum capacity. It's a lot like being an artist in some respects, where you're painting something, but the way it changes is going to last decades or centuries. The plants we introduce here may live here for the next 1,000 years.
How nice to hear about a project with such a long-term ambition, and getting to know the engagement work, which I did, has just been a delight, like the work Sally talked about at the School of Art. It is a university that cares deeply about its communities and how to work meaningfully with them. And there were so many highlights during the assessment. There was the Dennis Law Trust street sport project that supports marginalised groups through sport and physical activity and creative endeavour that Nick mentioned. There was the outreach into priority neighbourhoods and the many and varied ways that engagement's threaded into research and teaching. It gives you a real flavour, I think, from that film of the spirit that animates the community at the university. And we were particularly impressed, I think, by the compassionate and collegiate and committed leadership of Nick and Laura, who led the process and who committed to such honest reflection and learning throughout. Just like Suffolk, I think there was a humility and an honesty and a real willingness to learn that we loved in both of the universities. So given that, we're really delighted to award Robert Gordon University a bronze watermark in recognition of this achievement, and look forward to working closely with them in the next few years. And here they are, accepting their award.
Has helped us unearth who we are as public engagement agents. It's helped us recognise the incredible work that has gone on for many years throughout the history of RGU, and it helps us understand the impact that we have on other people. But I think the most important thing is it gives us a starting point for enhancement.
So Dennis and Legacy have a fantastic team of like-minded staff and volunteers. Working in partnership with RGU, they've recognised this and helped fill the gaps that we need to make a difference across Aberdeen City. And what I like about how RGU approach this is they look to help the source of the issue, not the wider. They go right to where the root of the cause is and use their strengths to help make a difference.
It's really valuable to see that public engagement is valued as highly as it is at RGU. One schoolchild once said to me, "I didn't know history happened up here," and that's what I love about what I do.
We're now on a journey about how we kind of enhance and deepen our work on public engagement. So getting the bronze watermark, since it's only the start of the process, we're now thinking about how we build on that, implementing our action plan, and think about the future.
Yeah, very, very well done, Robert Gordon, and again, a testament to the excellent work that you've been doing behind the scenes to create this kind of support for engagement and the very effective projects that have come as a result. So many, many congratulations. And we too look forward to working with you as you take your action plan into account. What a busy hour and a half. We crammed a load in. We had some amazing case studies and some brilliant people who are doing really thoughtful practice. We've had a really nice look behind the scenes at some of the practices and the support offered by our watermark universities, Robert Gordon University and Suffolk, the University of Suffolk. And then we've had the celebration of recognising 2 bronze watermarks, significant achievements for those institutions, for which we are really excited to have had the opportunity to get close to and to find out about, and look forward to taking others through this process and enabling them to recognise the support that they're doing, but also help them plan for the future. Our next seminar, if you can join us, is on the 8th of May. Do take a look. It's going to be looking at publishing about public engagement and the different ways we get our reflections and our knowledge about public engagement to different groups to enable us to reflect on the processes of engagement and why they matter, and the processes of culture change and why they matter within university involved research. And in perfect timing, I'd like to thank all of those who spoke today, all of you for your attention and for your questions and for your engagement with us. And we hope to see you all again soon.